Welcome everybody on this very hot evening. We usually complain it's too cold. Now we're complaining it's too hot. But I don't think we could ask for a better stage than the virtual stage right now and take advantage of being in a comfortable surroundings with some wonderful, wonderful poets to help us enjoy the evening. This is Midstream. We've been around for at least 8 years plus, and it was our reading series that was established by David Shove, who passed away a few years ago. And we are trying our best to carry on with a co-chair situation. And I'm happy to be host for this evening, welcoming four wonderful poets. And I'm afraid we have one who has not yet found his way in. Is that correct, Paul? We haven't heard from LeRoy. He was to be...
LeRoy is here.
I'm sorry?
LeRoy is here.
Oh, he's here. Wonderful. Okay, well then we're all set. Well, welcome everybody, and I hope that the evening will be very rewarding for all of us. Each of the four poets, LeRoy Sorenson, Lizz Paulson, Ray Gonzalez, and Diane Jarvenpa, will be our readers, each of whom will have 15 minutes to read their own poetry. And following that, we will have a brief opportunity to ask some questions. And following in the footsteps of our founder, I will start off by reading one of my own poems and then introduce the first reader. Throw me a kiss. Hidden in shadows on a balcony, you gather belongings. It's the month of May. The earth outside bursts a bed of tulips, a tapestry of sonorous colors I cannot see, curled in a red chair, reading Swan's Way, lost in the molecules of my physical existence. I gaze at images inside my mind, in attempt to catalog past. Unburdened days in Milan, olive picking at Cerboloni, a time before death, possessed, incomparable, infinite vistas forgotten. Two selves intertwined as one give pleasure to create symphonies beyond Beethoven, circles around bent curves. Throw me a kiss. From the wide arc, you move away. Now the sun is cold. The colors of the tulips fade. I turn the page as the carriage crosses the boulevard. We move now to the lauded poetry collections. 40 Miles North of Nowhere was published by Main Street Rag, and Railman's Son was recently published by Finishing Line Press. His work has appeared in the American Journal of Poetry, Atlantic Review, Cider Press Review, Crab Orchard Review, the Comstock Review, Nimrod, and So's Ear Poetry Review, among other publications. In 2019, LeRoy won the Tishman Review Edna St. Vincent Millay Poetry Prize. Sorenson has taken numerous classes at the Loft, the Literary Center, was a participant in the Loft Mentor Series, and graduated from the Loft's Forward program. He is a participant in the San Miguel Poetry Week project. He is a participant in monthly Zoom workshops with San Miguel poets and in the yearly workshop held in upstate New York. LeRoy currently lives and writes in St. Paul, Minnesota. I give the virtual stage to LeRoy Sorenson.
Well, thank you much. It's good to see, well, there's so many faces here, I can't even, and they keep popping up, so I'll just accept the fact that there's going to be a lot of that going on. I started writing when I was quite young, and then I continued to write all the way through college and into my mid-20s. And then I stopped writing and I went to graduate school in economics. And there weren't a lot of poets in economics. And so I returned to writing after I met my wife, who was a novelist. I went to the same experimental college as Patrick Hensel did. And I'm at St. Olaf. And so I'm going to read 4 or 5 poems. I'm first going to read a poem. Since this book, Real Man's Son, has been published, I've written 2 more books. And I'm going to read one of the poems in that unpublished collection. It's my full-length manuscript. It's called Testimony. Deserted in town, the church bells ring, but no prayer can save the crumbling meat plant on the east bluff. Even the mice have abandoned its walls, leaving the stale air to bats and ferocious rats who prowl in search of interlopers. A north wind rasps brick and grout, leaving crumble in its wake. I stagger back from its wreath of decay, a place where flesh once tore lesser flesh, where women and men toiled, knives flashing, blood splattered their daily repast, their presence all but forgotten. Mangled flesh, a rude for the unwary. Rusted beer cans from teenage excess, buried in knee-high reeds. Laughter and shouts, dim bones of better times, crueler times. Life entered one door, death left by another door. I crouched down to the gathered pieces of bricks scattered among the weeds, pieces scattered by a mad hand, and wish I could once again witness laborers flee to cars and pickups, released for a short while from relentless moans, flowing blood. Church bells peal again, their echoes ring hollow in the crisp air. My hometown was a railroad and meatpacking town, and this is the meatpacking part of it. The first poem I'm going to read is called Tomato Soup Reminds Me of Poverty. Tomato soup reminds me of poverty. That was the summer my mother slouched at the table, so beaten down, numb by the death of her first son, burnt deep into her bones, while my father sat at table's end, working into a fury. The summer I flailed at curveballs, beat up once a week by the Schmidt brothers. I walked the railroad yards between steaming engines and peeling off red boxcars. Every day the wind blew in from the southeast, where the meat plant sat, the stench of shit and blood. I walked on Main, sneaking glances into the faces of those escapees from the bars, those ruined faces. those tired faces looted of hope, their bent shoulders, waiting for me, a cracked linoleum floor, another bowl of tomato soup, and my father in another rage. The summer my mother first crossed her hands and wept, the summer I vowed never to return, the summer I prayed for amnesty, the summer when each day dripped into a soil twilight and the wind shifted clean and cool from the north. My father was a railroad man, not a meat packer. And so I have a couple poems that are based on my imagination of him being a railroad man. Although I did hang out quite a bit at the rail yards. This poem is called Roundhouse Remembrance. Before oil and grit sandpaper my throat, before howl pares down everything to nothing, I go back to the roundhouse where my father spent his days. Go back to hear Jim Steel boss Fat Jerry and Elmer to this task or that. Return to a hollow cavern, to steam and clangs and squirrels. I go back to the fire in my father's eyes because I burn in my blood in the way he did, and I must walk the line just as he did from my hometown to Brookings and Prior Lake and Waseca and New Ulm. I need to see those railmen close. I need to see those railmen close oil-streaked, wipe their shiny faces with grimy red bandanas, gather around a stalled steam engine, take turns with crowbars to beat the stuck pistons. I have to climb this shaky ladder with my father to the roof of the depot and survey the naked sky as he holds my hand, as he never did, tousles my hair as he never did, and sing in the voice of those men before my song turned sour. One of the things about having heat like this is I feel like I'm itching all the time. But so if I start to scratch like this, just ignore it. This poem is called The Junk Kid. Manny Jackson, the toughest kid on the block, stands on the playground, feet planted wide, ready to teach someone, anyone, a lesson. His head leans out of his dingy blue jacket like a turtle. And if I told you he just got beaten that morning by his drunk father, switched across the back of his bony legs, blood spitting on his feet, you might shake your head. His home reeks of burnt onions, sweat, and desolation. He sleeps with two brothers, one who most nights pisses the bed. He has trouble inhaling because of his broken nose, broken by a raging father. And if I told you his mother stands on a street corner, lost, unable to cross because devils lurk in the grocery store or hide out in the bathroom behind the closed door, the door with peeling yellow paint, you might shake your head again more slowly. This preacher man looks down on Manny and tells him he deserves what he gets. He doesn't want to stand too close to him, and you don't want to stand too close to him in baseball warm-ups. He's got a sour smell about him, sometimes has head lice. He often cries in the bathroom at school. Manny is a junk kid in a junk school. I once heard him singing in that rundown Baptist church off Main, singing with a with a voice so pure my heart ached. What if I told you I saw him on his knees on Percy Boulevard, holding a dead yellow cat, weeping, beasts flaring in the air, looking for anyone to blame. He goes to Nam, loses one leg. What if I told you afterwards his left hand shivers so much he can't hold a fork? What if I told you that if I will never enter a kitchen smiling of fried onions and not remember Manny, that drunk kid, and think I love him like I love my brother? I love him. What if I told you that? She goes for a walk. Each year, she walks on the first snow to the graveyard at the south end near the river. Its crunch feels just right under her boots. The road bright silver under the street lights. The night still, tiny houses dark, houses with small panes of glass hold the night close. Her child was born in a snow month. She knows where the grave is, even in the snow, even at night. There are no flowers in the winter, just polished granite, cold, bare. She wipes the flat washer clean, stands over it, stands as the snow swirls, stands with her head bowed. She wants to go farther into the prairie, but she knows she will turn back into town, moon and stars casting her body into a long, solitary shadow. I think I have time for a couple more. This is called No Exit. I did a lot of hitchhiking in my teens and 20s, early 20s. And this is sort of loosely based on one of my hitchhiking adventures. Just outside Tracy, a pickup with rusted fenders and gray metallic finish stopped, and I climbed in a cab filled with smoke and a red-headed woman. The skin on her left arm burned pink, freckles highlighted in the sun. I said Huron, and she nodded, dragged on the butt in her right hand, slammed the gear shift through its paces. She straddled the pickup over the lane divider. We peeled the road asunder 1 mile at a time. She glanced at me, her green eyes wide. If we keep going straight, she said, first the Rockies, then the Pacific, nodded to the radio, a whirling Jennings baritone about lost lovers. Sex, she said, it's the only thing keeping us going. Instead, we went through one nameless town after another, waving wheat and green corn centenars, drove on the edge of a ditch a few feet from the tire rim's edge, a few feet from oblivion. When she glanced again, I turned shy, imagined my face red. Next, on the radio, an early Willie Nelson. She told me about her dead boy, her dead husband. She chain smoked, her left hand gripping the steering wheel. She still wore a ring, a thin gold ribbon sliding back and forth on her fingers. I remembered when she drove away, a sudden horn salute, a pitcher's tossed from where I stood, and I wanted again the tart smell of her. She drove west, the sun almost gone, west to the Pacific, west to a place where blue never ends. I knew loss, but I had no understanding of an ache so deep in my throat that pain was the only sound I spoke. I remember how I put my hand on her taut shoulder as we drove to here, the town dust drive, my hand cramping, how we rode in silence, radio off, my youth no comfort. I think I'm out of time, so I'm going to stop right now. And
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you, LeRoy. Thank you for taking us along with you on your hitchhiking journeys. And thank you for making us so aware of how grateful we should be for what we have. Thank you. Thank you. That was very, very meaningful. In Midstream as a result of scrambled eggs. Lizz Paulson is a multi-ethnic, multicultural American writer of diverse European and Potawatomi indigenous descent. She was born in Flint, Michigan, and moved frequently with her family to diverse rural and urban settings before moving to Minnesota in 1973. As a result of experiences that robbed her for a time of her voice, she is passionate about speaking truth to life. Throughout her life, she experienced and knew friends and family with diverse educational and cultural experiences and other abilities who struggled for a place of social value. She says poetry is deeply healing in a world where healing is necessary, unifying for citizens of Earth because we can hear a common voice and learn of diverse expressions and experiences that overlay our common threads. A symphony of sound, instrumental in the author's voice and a young girl, now adult, inspired by the love of a teacher poet, word artist. Currently on sabbatical from a partnership with the St. Paul Public Schools, Lizz devotes herself to community activism, nurturing broader family connections, and writing poetry. And for that, we are very grateful. May I turn the stage, virtual stage, over to Lizz Paulson.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me here this evening. The poems that I'm going to read tonight are primarily ones that I've written within the last year. And they speak to the journey that we have been on together, a journey that I've taken throughout my life and the journey that people that I love have taken. First one is called The Year of Scrambled Eggs. This was the year of scrambled eggs. Most years before were 3-course meals where the events were served distinctly with a sequence we could depend on, with a few casseroles thrown in where the days were mixed up with a flavor all their own. Yes, this was the year of scrambled eggs, where we picked the hard shells from between our teeth and could not tell the up from the down, the yellow yolks from the white, that gave sustenance to our days. This was the year of scrambled eggs, where we were whipped and beaten, our insides battered. I am fried. Yes, this was a year of scrambled eggs, where our curses and our yells and the abuses of each other in the halls of our home and in our streets reverberated amidst calls of love and frustration and cries of pain. We cracked with the strain of COVID quarantine and the pain of our dark-skinned brothers. We cracked beneath the hands of merciless events. Yes, this was the year of scrambled eggs, when the smiling, sunny yolk was still there. But some days I could not. I could not see it, for I, the egg, and my inner child was fried, poached. Yes, this was a year of scrambled eggs, where I learned more about myself than I knew before, saw more beatings than I did before, heard the molecules of man in their scrambling, aching, cracked shells marching on in an endless line of aching dreams, all reflected on my TV screen. Yes, this was the year of scrambled eggs, when the shame burned higher and we were no longer glistening. In the midst of it, I see the sunny side. I still see the happy yellow yolk of hope that lights and lifts my days. I see it in the smile that I see on your zoomed in face. Yes, this was a year of scrambled eggs, a year we survived, a year of COVID grace. The journey of most of my life has been that of a lover of youth and kids. And part of that journey has been that I've been very fortunate to love the family of man that comes from many different experiences. And an adult friend of mine gave me the lines for this poem, and not the lines itself, but the idea for this poem. So this is told from his perspective. Hold on a second. Hip hop resonates in my wispy, tight-lipped, dreadlock swaying gait, beats out the drum in a COVID refrain. Stain me not with your black man shadow. Tie me not with your iron bars of knees bent. Your disdain. You won't break my spirit. You won't make me gasp. My harm, my fist is raised, for I am a proud black man. I am a proud, optimistic black man. I am positive I will survive. I smile. I smile, but I cannot forget. I am a proud, black, optimistic man, and I press on to forgive my past, to forgive my failings, and yet I can't dismiss that I cannot forget the past, the me versus them, the taint in our conversation while I sway and say, I am a proud black man. And I see the battered brown faces he saved. He guards me, skin like me. He guards me against hate. She knows my legacy. She rode the street with me last night, and I see the cop who wants a guardian to be known as. He, she, they came to serve my people, clothed in brown skin with blue shirt on. I forgive, but I do not forget. I choose nobility for hate. I give black, brown, blue brothers peace, a chance for us to hear each of their voices. For I am a proud black man. The next poem is one, I was privileged to be a special education teacher for a number of years and a foster and a respite care mother. It was a lifelong dream. And so when my children were of an age where my schooling and teaching didn't take up so much of attention, we shared our home with a lot of families and in our community. I always said I'd limit the number of kids I had so I could be a mother to more. And this is about one family I was very blessed to love and that I learned a lot from. It's called Their Barbies Were Broken. Their Barbies were broken, their innocence lost, their memories shattered, their mother was gone. Their hearts were rendered, their pain couldn't be borne the day they were severed from their mother. Their mother was a heroin addict, born into a family that raped their daughters, battered their women, drank and smoked weed to numb the pain, encouraged truancy repeatedly from school, shacked up without giving their children legal names, stole to make ends meet, and loved their children. They loved their children. The men worked odd jobs and sought work in repairing cars, taking what they could get, hoping for a better education. They did the best they could with what they knew. Intergenerational foster care is a bitch. Parole is a card game. You can't win. Fuck them, he said. How could they know? Immigration is a beast, legal or illegal. Still, the primary culture is unfriendly to those who speak broken English, don't understand the educational system, know how to post or write resumes online. Back home, it all made sense. Here, well, I don't know. I do know they loved their children. Still, the pain persisted. Their mother died, OD'd while seeking treatment. They were adopted by relatives because I wouldn't take in 3 young children with problems. I wish I had. Now, 12 years later, their innocence is lost. They're separated. One just released from jail, another one in foster care, the other, Mom, I'm okay. Just somewhere where you can't find me. Tell me about my mother, she said. Did you meet her? People tell me I look like her. My auntie adopted me, but they took me away. I was beaten, touched. But I'm lucky. I'm still alive, the 15-year-old girl said. Can you show me pictures of my mom? I wish I had had more courage, more wisdom, more love. Their Barbies are broken. Their innocence is lost. My husband is timing me, so I'm okay, good. The next one is called She Travels. She travels, sight unseen, to places that she's never been, internal dreams, her body aware of all the scars you've hidden there. Molestation, sexual abuse, she lifts them now, no more curse. She lifts them into your light. Now it's an injury. She, in this moment, no longer fights. Like a stained glass window in the dawn, her soul in beauty can travel. She now shining can travel on. She now present. She has won in beauty now, she travels on. I'm going to read now, well, let's see, got 4 minutes. I'm going to read one that was encouraged by the close proximity I had as a former military wife. It's called A Soldier Loves in Between. I hold you close, ribbons of flesh emasculated but not forgotten. Your brain gone when an IUD crashed into your Humvee on that Damascus road. Shards still embedded where no one dared to go. And yet, you remember the love that we shared, the tears we once cried, the gentleness of our clasp as we walked hand in hand, the birth of our child. And you cry for what is present, for what once was, and what now lies in between. As we strive to hold hands, to remember, to cry, and move forward. With all of our lives, with all of our tears, with all that we hold dear still living, as we dare to love in between. Let's see, it's a hard press. I added one in that I wasn't going to add. So I'm going to go on to Mississippi Lullaby, and if I have time, I'll read a poem called The Journey of an Injured Mind, about my life as somebody with a concussion. Yeah. Read that one. Journey of an Injured Mind. Go that one. I'm going to do Mississippi Lullaby. It speaks to my heritage and love for the Mississippi. The drumming thunders on a starlit night, calling the soldiers home. It sings, resounds with the reoccurring song of a Mississippi lullaby. So sing on and hear the resounding beat, the refrain of long ago, and hear the music that plays on still as only a Minnesotan knows. It's Mississippi song. A requiem is for the dead. Sing on now once again, flutes that play your heart's desire like maracas, timpani, and guitar. Lulling slumber for a child, carols for the saint, ballads for the young, lovers, and the old, lifted round our Minnesotan home. The music lingers on, lifted round like a Minnesota symphony. On a starlit night, it riffs on a modern rap, a sunny reggae, or a boatman's tune, and we gather round to hear the resound of our own united tune. So as you walk this sidewalk trail, remember and hear the refrains of our state, our people all, united in a spirit that is free. So sing on, sing with me, as you see our river below. The song that our state sang so long ago, the refrain of our Mississippi lullaby.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you. Thank you for finding your voice that was lost for a while. We can't do without it. It was just wonderful. Thank you so much for all of your insights and authenticity. Our next reader is Ray Gonzalez, who is a prolific writer, not only a prolific writer in many, many genres. He is a poet, essayist, and editor. Ray Gonzalez was born and raised in El Paso, Texas. His work is inextricably linked to his modern Mexican ancestry and American upbringing in the deserts of the Southwest, as well as to rock and roll music and mid-century American poets such as Robert Bly and James Wright. A longtime professor at the University of Minnesota, Gonzalez has spoken to the importance of place in his work. Quote, I do not have to live in West Texas or southern New Mexico to shape new poems. about my past life there, he told CLA Today, because the magical aspects of poetry have allowed me to bring the spirit of my home to Minnesota. Living in Minnesota has given me fresh perspectives about the area I came from. Perhaps my most powerful discovery in writing and teaching poetry in Minnesota is that all poets carry their homeland experience with them, no matter where they go. Ray is the author of numerous books of poetry, including The Heat of Arrivals, which won the Penn Oakland Josephine Miles Book Award, Cabazo Centura, a Minnesota Book Award finalist, The Hawk Temple at Tierra Grande, winner of the Minnesota Book Award for Poetry, Consideration of the Guitar, New and Selected Poems, another finalist for the Minnesota Book Award finalist, Cool Auditor, Faith, Run, and Beautiful Wall. His mixed genre book, The Turtle Pictures, received the 2001 Minnesota Book Award for Poetry. I could go on, but I would like to turn the virtual stage over to Ray so that we can enjoy the works that he has written. Ray.
Thank you. Thank you for that nice introduction. And thank you all for joining us here this evening. Can everybody hear me? Yes, okay. Yeah, I'm originally from West Texas, El Paso, Southern New Mexico. It's been in the 90s every single day, probably since mid-April, and it'll stay that way through probably early September. So that kind of dwarfs what we're going through, even though it's still, of course, very hot. This first poem is called The Trees. The trees want to touch each other. They wish to get closer because of the state of the world. Must become one tree before the landscape changes. When their mysterious leaves float to the ground, a man sitting under one tree extends a hand and touches the brittle falling. The trees gather their limbs and branches spread beyond the man's sight. The act of catching a handful of leaves is too late to transform anything. The sunlight reflects what he can't see until more leaves come down. Their darkness becomes one tree filled with shapes of other trees that release their shadows when the last leaves fall. The man was never there to see this. This next poem is called Gift for a Believer, and it was written under the influence of Robert Bly after hearing him read probably for the 8th or 9th time in my life. Gift for a Believer. His body is made of mesquite and prickly pear, thorns blazing in the night sky from a rare fall of rain, arms and legs extended to interrupt the water. His body so thick with green it can't be seen without an explorer's map that drives the history of the canyons away. The trail of ribs and bare hips covering the true story of conquest, and the driven hands lost in the dusty wind. His body carries itself cold and hushed, mountains blended into the head of the stars that fall onto the back. A spinal fire following the believer into the energy of sand. Feet burning to signal the body has walked into a cave filled with clay from the thumbs, the knees, and the eyes that closed toward that touching rain. This next one's a little bit different. I've been watching the show, believe it or not, on History Channel, Ancient Aliens. At first I couldn't stand it, and my wife loves that show. So I started watching and listening, and finally started catching on, even though I'm a little skeptical, but Ancient Aliens. The television presents nerds who call themselves ancient alien theorists. They insist we came from little green men thousands of years ago, and we did not evolve from apes. Their proof is buried in my collection of books on the Aztec and Mayan world. The theorists claim the strange symbols are not native, but were created by the aliens who changed our history. When I study those pages, I am learning the little green man tongue. I was taught about apes in school to hide ideas implanted in our brains eons ago when the mothership landed, and legions of creatures got out and painted graffiti on temples, clay jars, and statues of gods. So much for Hernan Cortez. He didn't burn Mexico City down. The ancient aliens did, because they did not approve of the Aztec pyramids. When my wife was in high school, a small UFO chased her through the low canyons near the Montana ranch where she grew up. To this day, she describes the hovering lights and how it maneuvered several yards behind her. Ancient Aliens is one of her favorite shows because she believes we are not alone. No, I guess we are not, and I am busy going through 48 more books on the Aztecs and Mayans. The new season has started, and I must illustrate my progress, or I might get taken straight up into the air. I think LeRoy mentioned trains earlier, railroads. My grandfathers on both sides of my family worked the railroads down in West Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. My mother's family lived all over the railroad towns in Arizona. This poem is called The Train. The distant train came out of the black cloud and blew its whistle 5 miles south of my house, waking me each night at 2 a.m. My interrupted dream followed the tracks along the border where the railroad stretched but never gained. My life as a 12-year-old allowed by the romance of a train I could never catch or see. Daydreams of leaving the desert becoming nights of lying awake, waiting for the sound to drop its cargo and blow free. The empty cars now filled with fleeing men, San Antonio bound, their desperation filling my sleep with black engines and cries drowned by the smoke of the horn. 2. The child of the train is ticketed all the way to the coast, where dead grandmothers wait to teach them how to keep tracking the lost who never made it home. Each child of the train arrives in black smoke, disembarks alone, the sleeping cars too far to reach, the engine having lost its roar. A dark town unknown because no one there dreams of the railroad. 3. Desert sunlight changed to a railroad union town where my mother was born. I have not been there since I was a boy because the train blasting through the heat of the past did not stop in Arizona. We drove through the town on the way to California because she wanted to show me the house, but the train derailed in a dream where remaining homes were torn down, smoke from the black engine hiding the dead, turning each body into a monument surrounded by tall saguaros that were the things that bled. 4. Coal in the heart, black animals in the lungs, the man shoveling more at the engine that burns, lies into ashes of family lore. No one knows the history of the desert rails. No one can forgive the foreman who left his loved ones behind. 5. The railroad bridge woke me, passenger cars flying into the river that reached the stars, train wheels crossing high over the baptismal water where I was held by a mother and father who refused to get off the train because there was something to prove, sprinkled drops on my forehead as black as the bridge. 6. The distant train came out of the white cloud near Fort Thomas, Arizona, burning to get there on time because only one train can be lost in a lifetime. Its children riding and staring at the mountains, the whistle blasting its way over the long curve of a smokeless sunrise, leaving the empty railroad station behind. I also write a lot of poems in tribute to favorite writers. And one of my favorite writers is the Portuguese poet, Fernando Pessoa. If you ever want to read a life-changing writer, read Fernando Pessoa, P-E-S-S-O-A. The Silence of Fernando Pessoa. I am here and I want to listen. There are sounds that could be named. There are windows stained by the hands of fame. I stare at dandelions in the grass. They come from a world that insists. I can walk without saying a word. I will not go home by way of the sea because the new desert is closer and I have vanished. My feet are two owls fleeing the earth, their wings disappearing each time I walk. The sensation of a great wind not stirring the dandelions because they grow too short. I am here and someone will close the book for me because to speak will become a sentence waiting to be written. And my last poem. This is for my family, especially my 3 granddaughters. Offering birds. In the middle of my afternoon nap, my 2-year-old granddaughter, Scarlett, runs into the bedroom to offer me a bird, her imagination carrying one in her tiny palm. Papa, she says, here is a bird. She comes to my side of the bed and places it in my hand. I am surprised and say thank you as she runs out of the room. I lie back, then again, Papa. She runs in with a closed fist and I reach out with one hand. Another bird, she says quietly, and I take it. Put my hand to my heart and hold back tears of blessing and joy. She does this 2 more times. The 4 birds nestle in my heart as she hurries out of the room, wings beating, and I wonder how large the flock will get before I am fully awake. Thank you.
Applaud. Thank you so much, Ray, for these wonderful poems and for shedding light on the things that we often find difficult to see. Thank you very, very much. Our last reader of the evening is Diane Jarvenpa, who has been a wonderful guiding light in workshops for the East Side Arts Council, where we have worked together for the last couple of years, along with Lizz, who recently joined us. So this is a wonderful evening to have at least 3 of us together celebrating poetry. Diane is the author of The Way She Told Her Story, The Tender Wild Things, and Divining the Landscape, published by New Rivers Press. Her poetry works Swift, Bright, Drift, and Ancient Wonders, The Modern Word, were published by Red Dragon Press. Diane has received the Midwest Independent Publishers Association Award and an Artist Initiative grant from the Minnesota State Arts Board. She is a teaching artist with the Alzheimer's Poetry Project in Minnesota as a singer, songwriter, performer under the name Diane Jarvie. She has received an Ignite Performing Fellowship and was awarded a Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund grant. Diane was awarded funding to bring her poetry and music together in the video The Way She Told Her Story. Jarvenpa finds tremendous inspiration from working with creative writing and poetry students through her workshops with the East Side Area Council and assisted living sites. Diane is an inspiring and enlightened poet and teacher, and I will attest to that as well. Diane.
Oh, I hope, can you hear me? Okay. Well, I'm honored to be here tonight, and I see many people who I know, so thank you for joining us on this cauldron of a night. I know we're all kind of doing this thing, but it's an honor to be here with these writers, as always, and to be back at Midstream reading series, because I've done it many times and I always walk away so enriched. And once again, so I feel very humbled to be coming last. And I'll try to keep to my 15 minutes here. I guess I'm reading mostly work that I've written in the last year, some of it during the pandemic. And this one is called Writing the Bubble. And it has an epigraph: every poet has trembled on the verge of science. Thoreau. This is the time the nucleus that formed near the birth of the solar system a few billion back shows up again. Its infrared signature over the night sky 3 miles across. Out in the deepening night, in our pockets of isolation, staring at stars, we lift eyes to comet smudge. This is the business of silence, pursuit of an echo back to our hunting and gathering of the elusive, its beautiful fizzing out as the new moon comes. What is this shred of silver, nightly whisper of past, but a way to not feel as haunted in the full-throated dark. A buoyant syllable scripted, should we want to read it. Maybe we all have a bit of flat earther in us when we look up, tiptoe to our own edge and gaze out. Oh, we have flat. Let us praise stamps, maps, lily pads. But who hasn't taken a miniature globe in hand and thought, what is this? How improbable this puzzle of water and rock. It appears an apocryphal round and in its extreme, rounder than a calabash or muscadine. Those NASA photographs of Earth make it look like it could rupture like a bubble. And so it is, as we are dragged again into enlightenment, drawing back more curtains to face how humans play pretend like nobody's business. The mind that perceives a comet or wildfire, loss or violence, or the full round earth doesn't have to then turn away, but keep perceiving it all in waves that radiate outward and bump into others' waves to form some kind of silent conversation in the way trees talk, as a way to make it all bearable, to keep practicing it like an old blues tune that carries water, that tends deep wounds, that rides a wild arc called the future. So this next poem was written kind of before the election, I guess, but I think it probably still applies. And there's a little epigraph from Thoreau again. Truth is ever returning into herself, wondering what this country would look like through the rearview mirror, past Wall Street and its pirate cargo hold. What would it look like in improbable balance? A harvested heirloom crop of our lost code of ethics, a walk away from the hunger for history sweet frosted, thawing of truths packaged up nice and square and hidden in the freezer aisle. What would it be like to all kneel in the garden of no border, bank the long beans, invest in catalpas, mutual fund salsa with all those tomatillos, weigh the equity narrative of the wisteria, follow the penny diminuendo of hummingbird, full on revenue up those bushel tomatoes, sip every retirement fund syllable of pomegranate, forever withdraw savings from the jukebox of the mockingbird, to fall not from division or betrayal, but fall as in some kind of love, as in greedy hope beyond the damage, to tender spaces now safeguarded, and to maybe some kind of liquid warbling, loss graduated over into the transmuting light of maybe a lily or the 1,000 flowers in this jar of honey. So my other life is as a musician, and during the pandemic, I lost all my work and marched down to my basement and started recording and making a new CD. And when I was down there, I looked out the window of my basement and I kept seeing lots of little tableaus of wildlife that I hadn't really seen for a while. And one of them was this family of doves. And I was so thrilled because I have had doves in my neighborhood. I've lived in my house for almost 40 years and always have doves, but they weren't around for the last few years. And then suddenly there they were, and I could just watch the little baby doves with the mother. And so this poem came from that. Again, the doves in the time of the pandemic. I have been hearing mourning doves. What is it about their calls that rescue a frenetic mind? The song's slow beat insists a mellow out, as if Donovan was singing from some rooftop, or the same way when Ray Charles offers as only he can, oh, what a beautiful morning, with the Count Basie Orchestra. There is no way you can refute that sure melodic truth. If any directive can be found from doves, it is make do, keep going. I do find endearing their whatever man approach to life. Nests made up anywhere, telephone poles will do. But their flight, all purpose in sudden ascent or dodge, most needed now. They survive in desert, drink brackish water, live almost as long as Jesus, though this is unlikely. 20 million are hunted every year. I find an oral balance in their returning here, a comfort in their deep allowance for approximation. Their song sounds a lament, maybe hunger or emergence of egg, or maybe not alarm or complaint. I admit as I feel their susurration into my very tired brain, I nod to their sigh of plausibility for something more than a slim wedge of hope, for how indeed the sounds of the earth are like music. So I really miss, I see some of my, I can't call you students. I see my poetic peers here. And I learned so much from you guys, but I really miss all my work with Alzheimer's Poetry Project went away, and hopefully things will start up again. But I really miss those poets, and I always learn so much from them as well. And this is a poem about just being in that space. Both my parents were in nursing homes at the end of their lives too. And it's a lot of witnessing when you're in memory care units or nursing homes, for sure. Still here. Our chain of wheelchairs speak against romance, but our palms are smooth and dry and can remember what is quick and wild, how hope or fever burns. We are a paper wing, bits of charcoal, cracks in a clay jar. But moon palaces and seven seas live deep in our reservoirs. There is containment, a repository, but sometimes a breaking off, a separation. We have turned warriors to a deep shadow cast day. Unbelievable colors magnify in memory, but hard to find in long white halls. Mimes to the middle ground, try to honey the unreliable. What is needed is in the garden, roots and runners, a leveling, a digging, blue air and obad, sweet shoots and mud. How breath comes from love and loam, heft and harvest. Even with this constant green hedge that secures our boundaries, we see it all. Go ahead, release us to the blaze of sun. We are not afraid. Let us really feel it. So I was driving over the Minnesota River today, and I saw quite a few really large dragonflies. And I kind of miss my really good dragonfly friend. I wish he was still with us. You know, Scott King, he was a dear publisher from our Minnesota poetry community, and he's no longer with us. And but he was a really good teacher and a guide, a field book author of wasps and bees and flower flies, and so generous in his gift of poetry, in his research, and most certainly with all the words of the beloved poets, here and far away, that he set so tenderly into our hands. He was a poet in love with words and the diversity of the living earth. And he knew a hell of a lot about dragonflies, red dragonflies, all dragonflies, damselflies, all of that. So this is a poem for him. He and his daughter Lida took my daughter, me and my daughter, out hunting for dragonflies, because he would he was trying to categorize all of them and find which dragonflies are living at different spaces and places in Minnesota. And so this comes from that. The day has wings. You take your shy body, pale voyager, to the knees, through gravity and pull. Surface angel pinned all around with dragonflies. Speech is soft here, just whir and zip, humming of all the old runes you have known, of the haibun of turtle, the canon of cattail, scripted marsh chirography. Here at this floating garden table, you stand and share the necessity of reflection, how day builds katydid and night fades to spore, how past swirls seed, how future lifts up wild into this perfect clarity, into this beautiful bloom of silver that lands all around you like an ancient rain of stars. Am I done? Do I have
One more?
one more?
One more.
I don't, whatever. So I thought it was so moving that the music community came out during the pandemic and just wanted to share. And then everybody, because everybody's in the music community, so everybody came out outside in any way they could to share. And there were so many amazing videos and YouTubes of that time of, you know, in Italy, I mean, all across the globe, they were sharing incredible music, and neighbors were coming out and singing Pete Seeger. And it was such an amazing response to such a scary time. And I just remember how I kept thinking my grandmother died in the last pandemic. And I just kept thinking of her, and she left behind, you know, her husband and 4 children, my dad, who was 2 years old at the time. And so this kind of just played over and over. They were immigrants, you know, and so all of this music sort of rang very deeply at that time. So this is called Listening Up in COVID time. Music, measure it or circle around it. Make it a new calculation against harsh grief, a bloom in place of loneliness. A kind of chainmail of sound threaded up through rib cage, a story, a mourning, a witness, a proof, an errancy in face of doubt, sent out from balcony, living room, porch, backyard, office, street, temple, sanctuary, rooftop. In spite of all that sits bitter on the tongue, a lyric call inside new decibels for us to hear the difficult brilliance in the full length of all our effort to remember fire, shadow, truth-telling, sun, lilac, kids playing, touch, beauty, wild dancing, loss, history, wounds healing, all that singing. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you, all of you. A loud applause, an abundance of applause for the inspiring, for the very deeply felt words that you offered us this evening. Thank you, LeRoy Sorenson, Lizz Paulson, Ray Gonzalez, and Diane Jarvenpa for bringing our hearts into the moment that we can all share and hopefully transform in some of the ways that we function in the world today. We thank you. And thank the audience for coming. I'm sorry that we're a little late. We don't have time to extend open forum here, so I will let you go and remind you that on July 8th, there will be another Midstream reading. I don't have the lineup of who will be here, but you can check out on the website. And then after that, we have considered going back to live performance. So be prepared to hop into your car or hop on your bike and start to mingle among the poets. So there is that to look forward to. Thank you all once again for a very inspiring evening. And thank you, Paul Mattis, who we could not do without, who has set up the Zooms and I'm sure is looking forward to the real stage and letting go the virtual. And without him, this could not have happened. And thank you all. It's been a pleasure to be part of this evening and every evening that Midstream Reading has to offer the community. Have a great summer.